Hello, I'm Stefan Daniels, and welcome to a new episode of the Payam Report, Iran Weekly Update. Human rights abuses in Iran remained alarmingly high this week. Dozens of executions occurred in a matter of days. New death sentences were issued and ratified, and measures against protesters and families seeking justice were intensified. In the opening part of this program, we will examine the recent surge in executions, highlighting cases like that of Sayed Mohammad Javad Bafai Sani, explore the conditions faced by political and religious detainees, as well as the brutal raid by security forces on the Seventh Day Memorial for defense attorney Khosrow Alikordi in Mashhad. Collectively, these events provide a compressed snapshot of the broader pattern of repression shaping contemporary Iran.
Over the past week, widespread human rights violations in Iran have persisted, with the wave of executions remaining alarmingly high. A total of 65 prisoners were executed in 50 cities across the country, including 3 women and 1 Afghan national. In addition, 1 prisoner died after being denied medical treatment, while another died by suicide. Most of the executions were reportedly related to drug offenses and murder. The Supreme Court has once again upheld the death sentence of political prisoner and athlete Sayed Mohammad Jawad Bafai Thani, following the rejection of his retrial request. His case has now been forwarded to the Implementation of Verdicts Office in Mashhad. This situation, coupled with the unexpected authorization of an in-person visit by his mother, has increased concerns that his execution may be imminent. During the same week, university student Motahari Gonay was summoned to start her incarceration. Additionally, a Baha'i resident of Baharistan in Isfahan province was detained after presenting herself at the Public and Revolutionary Prosecutor's Office and was transferred to Dastgird prison. Furthermore, Maryam Basir Tawana, the sister of Mehran Basir Tawana, who lost his life during the 2022 nationwide protests, was also committed to Lakan prison in Rasht to serve her prison term. Political prisoner Maryam Ekbari Monferd, held in Garchek prison in Varamin and now in her 15th year of imprisonment, remains in a state of medical limbo. Even though judicial authorities have formally authorized her treatment and her attending doctor has strongly emphasized the need for ongoing medical attention, she continues to be deprived of the necessary healthcare services.
On 12 December, after security forces violently raided the memorial ceremony for lawyer Khosrow Alikordi in Mashhad, a number of participants were arrested. Some were taken to Vakilabad prison and others to Soroush Detention Center. At least 27 people are still in custody. Most have been given 1-month detention orders, and bail has been set for a smaller number. The charges brought against them include propaganda against the state and collusion and assembly against national security. Among those detained are Narges Mohammadi, Sepideh Gholyan, Puran Nazemi, Hasti Amiri, Abul Fazl Abri, Aliye Motalebzadeh, Nura Hagi, Vahide Hagparast, and Ali Adinezadeh. Families of several detainees have reported from inside Soroush Detention Center that the prisoners have been subjected to systematic violence and degrading treatment. According to their accounts, detainees were transported in cage-like vehicles in extremely cramped and dangerous conditions, and some were injured during transfer. After arrival, officers reportedly formed a tunnel of beatings, forcing detainees to walk through while being struck with their hands tied. The reports describe ongoing beatings, severe overcrowding, lack of basic facilities, and serious physical injuries, including broken ribs and head wounds, without adequate medical care. Food and nutrition inside the detention center have also been described as very poor and insufficient.
In the second part of this program, we turn to this week's labor and social protests. From pensioners in the Social Security, steel, and telecom sectors to nurses, healthcare staff, oil and gas workers, and workers in industry and mining. People continue to protest against poverty, unpaid wages, and deepening job insecurity across multiple cities. This week's report shows that protests are expanding both in depth in sectors such as pensioners and oil workers, and in breadth across different cities and workplaces.
Pensioners, nurses, oil and gas workers, and workers in industry and mining were at the center of this week's labor protests. Alongside them, protests were also reported in municipal services, among different professional groups, and in university and social spaces.
Among pensioners, gatherings were held in several cities. Social Security and state pensioners protested in cities such as Shush, Ahvaz, Tehran, and Kermanshah. Steel retirees rallied in Isfahan. Telecom retirees mobilized in a wide range of cities, from Ahvaz, Sanandaj, and Kermanshah to Shiraz, Tabriz, Tehran, Urmia, Isfahan, Mashhad, Rasht, and several others.
In the health sector, protests by nurses and healthcare staff were reported in Sanandaj and Gorgan. In Mino Dasht, staff at Fatemeh Al-Zahra Hospital held a protest, and in Ahvaz, employees of Jundishapur University of Medical Sciences also demonstrated.
In oil and gas, workers of the Iranian Offshore Oil Company, IOOC, held protests at multiple work sites, from Lavan to Karg Island and the Foruzan offshore platform. The repetition of protests across several locations indicates a growing level of coordination in this sector.
In industry and mining, workers at Pasargad Alloy Steel in Kavar and workers at Siyahdan Steel in Abhar held protests. Workers at the Zarshuran gold mine in Takab also demonstrated. Workers at the Khawaran Desert Cast Iron Company in Khusf and laid-off workers from the Kushgan Transformer Plant in Zanjan were among other groups of protesters. In Shush, workers at the Mian Ab Agro-Industrial Complex protested, and parts of these protests have been ongoing.
In municipal services and retail sectors, service workers of the municipality in Kermanshah and bakery workers in Ahvaz held protest gatherings.
In the university and broader social sphere, students at the University of Tehran dormitories, including the main campus and Kui Danishgah, held protests. Addiction treatment practitioners, opponents of current marriage, dowry, mahriye rules, and families of political prisoners sentenced to death also carried out protest actions.
Overall, this week's protests were largely driven by livelihood and workplace demands, but the persistence and spread of these actions, especially among pensioners and oil workers, paint a more tense and volatile picture of the broader landscape of social demands.
Taken together, this week's protests by workers and other groups with shared interests reveal 5 key features. First, the main centers of protests are still those sectors under the heaviest pressure: nurses and healthcare workers, employees in oil and related industries, industrial and mining workers, and alongside them, pensioners. Second, the geographical spread is wide. Protests are not confined to one city or one industry. From Ahvaz and Shush to Tehran, Isfahan, Kermanshah, and Sanandaj, and many other cities, we see a repeating pattern of numerous local protests. This spread is both a strength because it shows how deep dissatisfaction runs, and a weakness because it makes coordinated nationwide action much more difficult. Third, among all these groups, pensioners, especially telecommunication, social security, and steel retirees, have a particular weight, both in terms of continuity and the number of cities involved. In parallel, offshore oil workers are showing signs of greater coordination across different work sites. These two sectors have more potential than others to build networks and create synergy. Their coordinated protest actions offer clear and promising examples of how network-based organizing can develop. Fourth, a large share of the protests focuses on broken promises, job security, and the issue of unpaid wages. With the debate over the minimum wage approaching, under conditions of very high inflation, this is precisely where a new front of class confrontation is likely to open up, the battle to defend basic living standards. And fifth and finally, although the protests remain strongly workplace-based and sectoral, in some of the more sustained and coordinated actions, broader political and social demands are also being voiced. In particular, the organized, simultaneous actions by pensioners are becoming a key link between narrow workplace demands and more general demands within the working population. From calls to abolish the death penalty and free jailed labor activists, to challenging the roots of inflation, structural corruption, and shock therapy economic policies. The target of these slogans is the entire power structure, both of its main factions being reformists and hardliners alike. What we have seen this week are two parallel lines. On one line, intensified repression, executions, and pressure on political, civic, and religious activists, and on the other, the continuation and expansion of labor and social protests, especially among pensioners and oil workers. As long as these two lines remain separate, the justice and anti-execution movement on one, and the labor and social justice movement on the other, the balance of power will not shift in favor of the majority of people in Iran. Our aim in the Payam Report is to help, week after week, to draw a clearer picture of these necessary connections.